Hey everyone, and welcome to the Atomic Cinema Experiment. I am Peter, and joining me as always is Tara.
Greetings, citizens.
This is a science fiction movie podcast where we get together, we watch a movie, we talk about it, it's the whole thing. The planned episode for this week actually changed. We told you last time that it was going to be a certain film by the name of Cocoon. Unfortunately, at the very last minute, because we don't check these things in advance, Tara went to get it and it wasn't available for rental anywhere. We're still going to do it at some point. We'll have to, it just takes a bit more time to get a hold of the movie. So what we actually did is we skipped to the next thing on the list, and for some reason, I don't know why Tara has so many picks back to back. Where are my picks in this list? But Tara wanted to do Sphere, which is a science fiction film from 1998, starring Dustin Hoffman, Sharon Stone, Samuel L. Jackson, Liev Schreiber, and Queen Latifah. Which I had never seen this movie. This is, even though it's like right in the sort of sweet spot of stuff that I would have seen on cable or whatever at that time, I somehow never did. So we're going to talk about Sphere. We'll start spoiler free. We'll give you a warning before we get to spoilers. The basic premise of the film, and yeah, you should be doing the evil Mr. Burns hands. So the basic premise of the film is that a aircraft of some kind has been discovered in the ocean, and they assemble a team of various professions. You know, Dustin Hoffman's a psychiatrist, Samuel L. Jackson's like a math professor, I think Sharon Stone's a biologist, and then Liev Schreiber's like a physicist, maybe?
Astrophysicist.
There you go, astrophysicist. And it's a craft that, you know, doesn't, you know, it's been here for 300 years based on whatever evidence, and therefore is very lightly extraterrestrial in some way. And this is a team that they've put together to go down and check it out. There's some more reasons to it than that. We'll get into it later on, but that is the basic premise. And of course, once they get down there, they explore things and weird stuff starts to happen, and I'll just kind of leave it there because I think beyond that we're into spoiler territory. So Tara, you requested this. You'd obviously seen this before.
Yes.
So I will ask the question. How did you revisit it now? And for, I guess, you know, the two-pronged question: how do you feel now watching it again in the year of our misery, 2020? And how did you feel from memory beforehand as well?
I think from memory, I had read the book. It was originally written by Michael Crichton, famed author of Jurassic Park, The Lost World, Terminal Man. And I think I've read nearly all of Crichton's books, and Sphere is up there at the top for me. I love this story.
Can I just interject here that you picked Lost World and the Terminal Man over Westworld? I just want to put that out there.
Well, it wasn't a book. He wrote the screenplay for that.
Was that not a book first? Okay,
no.
Fair enough. Okay, you know what? Fair enough. Yeah. I will accept that. Please continue.
So I had high hopes for the film when it was coming out because Sphere was at the top of my list for Crichton books. It was a really riveting read. I still highly recommend it, even if you've watched the movie, to read it. It's really great. And I remember being somewhat underwhelmed, but not fully disappointed. It actually is still pretty faithful to the book. But watching it now, I don't understand why people hate the movie. It has really bad reviews that I don't think are warranted. I think that, the film definitely feels a bit unfinished. And I think the actors or someone in the crew has acknowledged that they were rushed to put it out. And as a result, some of it does feel unfinished, but for the most part, the ideas are there. And I do think it's a really cool design. We get some, fun underwater sequences. It's basically like The Abyss. If you're a fan of The Abyss, you'll probably love this movie. And I don't...
Hi. Tara's statements are not the opinions of the Atomic Cinema Experiment or Male Fuzz TV Incorporated.
It's at least half of the opinion.
They do not represent the views of this show in any way, shape, or form. Just put that disclaimer out there. Particularly in the Abyss comment is what I was getting at there. But
I think the acting in the movie is really great. Like, you don't see Dustin Hoffman in this type of role, and I think he like kills it. He's so funny in it and interesting, and he's a great actor, and it really shows. Sam Jackson is the coolest. I really like Liev Schreiber in him too. I never really watch him in things, but like I haven't seen his show that he's known for. But he's really excellent as well. Sharon Stone's character is a bit different from the book, if I remember. I don't recall like any kind of history between another character and her, but for the most part, like, you know, she's got some inner demons and some outer demons that show up in the film. So I like the movie. I like is his name Peter Coyote also? I think he plays a good military leader. It's good. I like the movie. I don't think it deserves the ratings that it has on certain websites. But I will admit it's a little bit of a guilty pleasure. Go ahead. You may speak.
No, just savor the moment. Savor this moment before I start speaking. Just savor it. Savor it a little bit. You enjoying it? Is it good?
Yeah, I like it here.
That's part of the show. We're unopposed. You've stated what you feel, and
yeah,
this gets to be that on its own.
End of review.
It would be a shame if someone were to ruin it, wouldn't it? Yeah, this movie's a complete and utter mess. This movie, like, there's scenes in this movie that just start happening. There's a whole period in the first half where, like, it just every time there's a scene, something just starts happening, and I'm like, what is this movie? What is going on? It'd been nice if if I grew to care or like a bit of the characters by the time all the stuff was going down the third act. The sad part is that I do think there's a lot of good ideas in here, and I can make the assumption that the book is probably much better, and does a much better job of creating the atmosphere that lends itself to the actual concepts that the movie does eventually get to. When you find out what's really happening kind of in the second half, interesting idea. I don't know if the first half of the movie actually set up for any of it, or made me feel like it fit together with the rest of the movie. It felt like the movie had a conflict of ideas and interest in what it wanted to be. It's like, is it an Alien knockoff? And even though there's not a monster per se, there's a section of the movie which feels like it's just taken beat for beat the plot of Alien, and I'll talk about that when we go through it a little bit more in depth. But there's also parts where it's like, okay, does it want to be a monster movie? Does it want to be this weird ethereal, like almost Lovecraftian science fiction movie? There's a portion where does it want to just be a disaster movie where they're trying to survive? It's like bouncing around so many things, and I don't feel like it ever really. And the entire time, it really just feels like this is a late 90s like Hollywood movie that's been thrown together very quickly. It's worth mentioning the adaptation as its credit. It doesn't say screenplay by. It says adaptation by Kurt Wimmer, who went on to write and direct Equilibrium, which I do remember enjoying from my early teens, but I've not seen it since then, so it might not hold up.
Yeah.
We should probably do that relatively soon, actually, because we've brought it up a few times in the last 6 months.
Yeah, that was we talked about it a lot in Alphaville because they had similar concepts.
That's right. So, and everything he did after Equilibrium definitely got completely torn apart. And this film,
But there's another writer on it that's pretty well regarded, isn't there? Because I did look it up earlier.
Well regarded. Oh, okay, sorry. This is weird, actually. There's 2 screenplay credits, and then Kurt Wimmer gets the adaptation credit. So I don't know precisely what Kurt Wimmer then did. I don't know if there's 2 people credited for screenplay. And Tara, you're gonna have to stop using your mouse. The scroll wheel is far too loud.
We say nice things about the movie.
Say nice things about the movie.
I'll get a quiet mouse when you get a quiet chair. How about that?
Oh, it's like that, is it? It's like that. So
and my mouse is pink, so I'm never getting rid of it. Yeah, Stephen Hauser did a lot of other adaptations of Crichton books too. And then Paul Atanasio. Oh, he wrote Quiz Show. That's a really great movie.
wait, hold on. Stephen Hauser? Like, what are you talking about? This is the only script he's written.
We talking? No,
I clicked on his
known
name.
for-
He's done.
Oh, I see. Yeah, you're right. He just wrote Sphere.
He's on
And then-
miscellaneous crew for a bunch of stuff, but
Okay, well, then the other writer slash producer, Paul Atanasio, wrote Quiz Show. It says writer there, right there. Disclosure, which I haven't seen in a long time, but that's also a Crichton book.
yeah.
And Donnie Brasco, which I think is good. Johnny Depp and Al Pacino is in that. And
I haven't seen Donnie Brasco. It's the only thing on here that I think I've heard of. I've heard of The Sum of All Fears. I never saw it either, but I heard of it.
yeah, that's it's like a war, like nuclear war film. Quiz Show is really, really good.
Oh,
And
so
that was
based on,
only 4 years before.
based on a Tom Clancy book. What a surprise.
Yeah, sounds
So,
about right.
so yeah, we got a first timer, someone who went on to do a lot of bad things, and then someone else who has apparently done some good things. I'll take your word for it, but I'm not ready to jump in the water here with that opinion. What was I getting to before Tara had to scroll wheel her way through some credits to prove me wrong about something?
Sorry, I put my boxing gloves on. Gotta fight.
Yeah, this is like, don't get me wrong, as far as trash goes, this is the type of trash that I can get into because it's trying to at least emulate a lot of things that I like, but I don't think anything in this movie clicks together. I feel like there's so many moments that are just what the F moments, and not even like a good David Lynch kind of way, where it feels like there's this confident like hand behind it, like making some sort of ethereal point. It feels like it doesn't go far enough with a lot of its ideas. It feels like it doesn't develop them enough. Yeah, I'll leave it there for now, but as we go through it,
I'm trying to see when the book was written. 1987. So yeah, I mean, yeah, there's definitely some elements of Alien and of The Thing. I would say The Abyss, but that, I mean, the movie came out after The Abyss, but the book didn't. So, and I think
I think it's still a fair statement though, because even if the book's not inspired by The Abyss, it's not a hard thing to say that the visual look of this movie or the way they shoot underwater stuff, or you could still say that the movie took a lot from The Abyss, even if the book predated the movie.
Yeah, sure, but I mean the idea of an alien or a possible, first contact with an alien underwater, that that is for me what it feels like The Abyss. A lot of the rest of it doesn't really feel like that. Like, sure, they're in an underwater like hideout, so things are going to be dripping, and there's the constant talk about pressure and being able to survive down there underwater, but
I always assume there's other examples of The Thing before the one just that we happen to know. Like, I don't even assume this book is the first time that there's been a possible alien thing.
Well, no, they bring up, well, I mean, I don't know about Alien, but they bring up 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, which this is also kind of reminiscent of.
Yes, they bring that up repeatedly. They also name dropped Rod Serling at one point. More than that, when we're going through the movie.
Yeah,
but
so at least 1 star from Peter for that.
I will not give points for cheap pandering. How dare you?
We all know that you would.
I would not. I mean, don't get me wrong. I don't think it's the worst thing ever. I think it's like it's kind of watchable in that it's like again, I don't really do this anymore, but from the time period, let's say it's the year 2002, and this is on at 1 a.m. on a cable channel, and you just sort of let it play because there's nothing else on at that time. You let it play, it's watchable, you sort of chuckle about how kind of much of a mess it is, and then you forget it existed. And that, in that respect, it's a fine late night watch because it's that quality.
Okay. I don't really think it's messy, but I also have, a pretty good understanding of what's going on in the film because I have read the book and then I've seen this movie before. So, like, going in, I know what's happening and what to expect. And
I'll put it this way. See, when they start revealing what's actually going on, sort of like 2/3 through, maybe a little before that, and they started sort of explaining why they think this, I sort of went, what? I was like, this movie did not set me up for this at all. This does not feel like it was properly seeded throughout the film.
Yeah, and it does, turn into underwater horror film for a while, and there's some brutality in the film that you don't really expect, I guess.
Yeah, it's kind of a weird one. Some of the effects really don't hold up either as well. I think it's fair to say.
But a lot of it is practical. Like, I think the jellyfish scene looks really good.
Yeah, the sphere, the titular sphere, I thought looked quite bad because it's all CG.
It's one of those things that I remember being disappointed in when I saw it in theaters because it was gold. Like, I hated the fact that it was gold because it was like such a detail that they bring up all the time in the book. I'm not going to be that person and always, it's just one in the book, but like just in the beginning. But
see if I could be bothered doing this. I'm not going to, but if I could be bothered doing this, I would clip that little bit and replay it every single time you say something about the book for the rest of this review. I'm not going to.
I sound like a Game of Thrones fan. But the book makes it very clear that it's silver, that it's mercury-like, and it is like a perfect sphere with all these etchings around it. And that's why people are so fascinated with it, because the etchings make it seem like there's a door somewhere in it that they can find. But in this one, it's almost like it does look alien. And I was at first upset that it was gold, but watching it this time, I'm like, no, I like that it's gold because it clashes so much with the very, industrial steel of the interior of the ship. Or not ship. Yeah, ship.
Yeah, ship. Yeah, I get that. It just looks like bad CG. It's funny because it's not like it's trying to recreate a thing, because a lot of CG is either recreating a person or an animal or
it's just a ball. Yeah.
It's just a ball that's kind of got a rippling effect, so it's kind of like a liquid metal kind of look. Because remember, mercury is what they compare it to. And it just has that look to it. It has that kind of like they weren't ready with a CG yet. It's just not there.
I think also, I have heard that the movie was sort of rushed to get out at a certain date and, before it was ready. And there are parts of it that feel unfinished, and some of it, like Peter Coyote has a scene where he goes to like touch the sphere and it doesn't really line up very well. It doesn't look good. And, there's a scene with a monster that you don't really get to see. And I assume they wanted to show it, but they just didn't have it ready yet, so they just made the movie without it.
That said, I don't think this is a rush thing though to complete a bit. To make there's some really dodgy miniature work at one point, which I thought was really weird because it's a sort of miniature work I expect, and I forgive it, but I expect to see it in like 50s movies, and I'm like, oh, that's cute. They have to use the miniatures. It's something I expect to see in like an old Godzilla movie or something like that. And it's at one point it's just because there's a lot of like ships and carriers and stuff around this area in the ocean. There's a lot of military sort of a lot of naval presence, right? And there's a point at one point where it's like just a shot from the distance, and it's got that thing where you can really kind of tell the scale no matter how much you try to hide it, because water doesn't scale. Like water is the scale it is. You can't fake it, and that's what always gives it away in the old Godzilla movies. And there's a point where there's like a sort of like something comes up from the water, and I'm like, it's obvious how small this is. And the ships in the background look really tiny and fake. I don't know. It's like it's a practical, but this is one where I'm like, you could have done something better with that. This just could have had anything else. It'd have been fine. But so there's actually a really weird choice in this movie because I think the edit in this movie is really bad. It's one of the things that really stuck out to me. It's like the chapters that they do. Yeah. First of all, like there's plenty of things that use chapter names and it works, and it has this like almost gravitas to it because they're being really confident saying, no, this is our chapter, this is how it starts. But what really stuck out to me about this is one, how inconsistent they were, where the first like half hour of the movie has like 5 chapter titles, and then like the back 90 minutes has like one somewhere. Yeah, and that's how Crichton writes. Like he doesn't do chapter 1, he'll do like the deep, and then but those chapter lengths are not as consistent either. Like he'll have some that are just a few pages and some that are like 90 pages. Yeah. So and I think again, this is probably just a result of we have to get this movie finished at a certain point. So let's just do what worked in the book. Well, to add to that, a lot of the transitions to these chapter names actually feel really awkward because it'll fade to black almost mid-sentence in a scene, and I'm like, what is this? Why did it just do that? And the one that bugged me the most... It's almost like, are we doing a commercial? Yeah. The one that bugged me the most is there's a scene where they're getting their I was going to say spacesuits. They're deep sea diving suits on, right? Yeah, underwater and space are very similar in film. and they're about to go down and go over to the ship, right? And it's Dustin Hoffman, Jackson, and Stone, and Liev Schreiber, and they're about to go, and they're suiting up, and it fades to black, and I'm like, fine, sure, right? And then after the chapter title comes up, and it says, you know, the craft, or whatever the one is for that, right?
Mm-hmm.
It cuts back to them, and they're still in the same room, and I'm like, that you literally put this in the middle of a scene and try to make it feel like a transition, but it doesn't work when it's in the. Do you know what it made me think of, bizarrely? It made me think of the opening of Suicide Squad. If you remember the opening of Suicide Squad, it did this thing where it cut to the title as Amanda Waller was walking up to the door of a building, and it cut to like Suicide Squad, right? And then it cut back to her just going through a door at the same, and I'm like, why don't you skip to the scene she's inside the building? It's weird to go back to the continuation of the same moment. We don't have to see her physically go through a door. We understand that she can walk through a door.
I don't think it's fair to compare this movie to that pile of trash that was the Suicide Squad.
Hey, Suicide Squad's worse. I'm not. Don't for a second think I'm saying this is on par with Suicide Squad.
Okay.
But that one particular thing and that one particular scene in Suicide Squad, there's an overlap. It's an overlap. Right?
Yeah. I'm not a huge fan of it either, to be honest, but it's it does kind of stand out, and I don't know if it makes the movie feel dated, but it makes it feel cheap, and it
feels cheap, yeah.
Yeah, it does feel.
It feels like a crutch. It feels like it's there to hide some things they don't have, or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the movie is not, you know, a knock out of the park, but there is a lot in there, especially the sci-fi elements of it. And I love all the science talk. Like, it really does feel like real science jargon. Like, they got an astrophysicist and a mathematician. I like the roles that Liev Schreiber and Samuel Jackson play a lot. I think they're real fun. They have a cool quarrel with each other for just being who could be the nerdiest, smartest person.
Yeah,
and,
there's a bit of a sort of intellectual dick measuring contest that's kind of constantly going on between them. About who got their first PhD first, because they're both wunderkinds, and they both got they both graduated university at one at 18, one at 19, and that's kind of the point of contention, is that one did it a year earlier. And that stuff was fine, for sure. I have to admit, I agree to a point that I think it's nice to see Dustin Hoffman in a movie like this, because he doesn't typically do this sort of stuff, and I imagine that doing this movie probably put him off ever doing it again. But especially since this particular movie, because it's set underwater, the shoot would have been a nightmare, because the shoot would have been constantly being drenched in water.
Doesn't everybody complain about underwater shooting? Yeah,
they hate it. Most actors will do it once, and then they'll be like, you know what, never again. It puts them off it for life. And I feel like, well, I agree that it's nice to see him in this kind of role. The more the movie went on, the more I felt like he probably shouldn't have been there. It felt kind of like, I don't want to say miscast per se, but it felt like he didn't fit in. It felt like,
I don't know, like the scenes between him and other characters though work really well for me, with the exception of maybe the Sharon Stone. But
she's a bit of a weird element as well. I feel like she's kind of, just like the big name, attractive actress they could put in there. You know, it's not quite as bad.
I appreciate that they didn't do a wet T-shirt on Sharon Stone,
because they
maybe you disagree, but
no, I agree. I object to that. I constantly complain about shitty objectification in movies where it's unnecessary.
And her and Dustin Hoffman have like some history where she's not happy with him. And I like that it doesn't go into that, like any other movie would have been like they fall in love at the end, and they don't. It's still like they just become respected colleagues.
Don't get me wrong, it doesn't go, I mean, it like, as much as I'm criticizing it, saying that they just got Sharon Stone because she's Sharon Stone and it's just for that appeal, it doesn't do a lot of the things that other movies would do. It doesn't feel like Denise Richards being like a scientist but wearing like a swimsuit in James Bond. It doesn't feel like Tara Reid in Alone in the Dark, where all she does is put on a pair of glasses and all of a sudden she's a scientist because she's wearing a pair of glasses. It doesn't change the fact that she's, Tara Reid. And I don't mean to insult Tara Reid, but she's never particularly presented herself as someone who would pass as a person with a PhD.
I worked with this girl in my first job in a movie theater, and I thought she was such a ditz. Like, nothing ever seemed to click, but she was super hot, so she got whatever she wanted. And like 5 years later, I was on social media and I saw that she had was a friend of somebody, and I checked her out, and she has like her master's degree in like astrochemistry. I didn't even know that was a thing.
I mean,
So you
sure.
can never tell.
Sure. But it is a very movie. It's a very movie thing. It's a very Hollywood thing. We want nothing but attractive people. So,
Yeah.
and let's face it, a lot of brainy nerds aren't the hottest people in the world. Some are. There's some attractive ones, but movies
They're
would
all in
have you
this
believe.
movie.
Yeah, movies would have you believe that they're all super hot. That's kind of the point I'm making.
Yeah. I do like Dustin Hoffman in the role, especially in the beginning. Every time he has a conversation with Samuel Jackson, I think he's funny, and like it looks like they have good banter together. He plays a psychologist, which seems like an odd person to have on,
Do you know
on
what's
the
funny?
party.
As much as I'm saying that Dustin Hoffman feels out of place, it's not because Dustin Hoffman, despite the fact that he's a long-running movie star who's been in movies since the 60s and he's been this big name, he actually, at least as an older man, maybe when he was younger he did look a bit more Hollywoody, but he does actually feel like more of a normal guy. Despite the fact that he's really well known and a big star, he actually does have a really sort of normal, kind of typical guy in his 50s look in this movie, right? My complaint with Dustin Hoffman feeling out of place is more how he delivers dialogue. There was almost points in the second half of this movie where I could almost like feel him like hating the dialogue he was like saying, and like I could see him. It's almost like you can see him like, looking off camera for his check, just to make sure the check's there for him off camera, so that as soon as the yell cut, it can go
That's
off.
kind of a plot point of this movie too.
So like I feel like I don't know if like they were all unhappy on set. Like it feels like that kind of movie, not just because they're underwater, just because it feels like kind of a mess. So
I know that Samuel Jackson was also filming Jackie Brown at the same time, so you can't imagine like him going on the weekdays from this movie underwater, working on a script that maybe he's not sure about, to Quentin Tarantino like masterpiece film.
Yeah, it's so funny. Joe's funny because I have Letterboxd, right, and it keeps track of all the movies that I watch. And one of the things that it does if you pay for the Pro, which is a small price per year, is that it tells you like, okay, this is the actor you've seen in the most movies. Here's the thing: Samuel L. Jackson wins by a landslide. He beats even, I think Arnold's my second, and Arnold's like 25 or something like that. I don't know how many movies it is, but Samuel L. Jackson is in the 50s. Like I have seen,
he crosses so many genres.
Does. He does, and it just went up by one because I just watched Sphere for the first time, so that's another one on the list. Right, the dude is in so many movies.
Maybe he's like the greatest actor of all time.
And every year, Letterboxd does this thing where they put out like stats for the year of like, okay, so here's like the most watched movies of the year, but the highest rated movies of the year. And one of the things they always do is here's the most watched actors of the year, right? Samuel L. Jackson has won that category every year since the website existed.
He's also in the Tarantino franchise, and he's in the Marvel franchise, and he does horror films and sci-fi films and drama movies.
And it is notable that the actress who has won that award, I think the last 3 years in a row, is Scarlett Johansson, who's also in the Marvel movies, worth mentioning.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm just saying, Samuel L. Jackson, he's like just the most dependable, likable dude there is. This is kind of a weird role for him, I thought, compared to normal. It's kind of nice in a way because it's different.
Yeah, he seems almost like an extension of his character in Jurassic Park.
I think I can't really critique the characters anymore until we talk about spoilers, because I have to kind of talk about what they failed to really establish before they actually start doing things. But Liev Schreiber's alright. I find Liev Schreiber a really hard character to trust. There's something about his face that just makes me think he's untrustworthy.
Is it because of the first X-Men movie? Was he in that one or the second one?
No, he was in X-Men. He was in X-Men Origins Wolverine, so it was actually technically the fourth.
Oh, okay, yeah. So is it that movie?
It's not. I think it's more Scream 2 than anything else. But
okay.
But
never seen it.
Sure. Did you see Scream 1?
No.
It's worth watching Scream 1. Scream 1's a pretty solid movie.
I think I've seen 3 or 4.
Oh god, don't watch 3. 3's the worst. It's terrible.
I didn't like it when I saw it. I went because it was a friend's birthday, and she said, "This is the movie I want to see on my birthday." And all right. And
well,
it didn't make me want to watch the other ones.
And also, I hope the friendship didn't work out because it wasn't a keeper.
Yeah, I don't know what she's doing now.
Watching bad movies is what she's doing now.
She introduced me to The Shining.
Even a broken clock's right twice a day. Okay, that's not.
Hey, the girl loved horror films, all right? She's one of you.
How dare you? I have taste.
She
I have
said,
standards.
I love this franchise. This is the movie I want to see for my birthday. And so we went and saw it.
Actually, it's in the theaters. I'm going to give her the benefit of the doubt and say that she didn't know before she saw it that it was like garbage. I mean,
No.
Scream 2 wasn't as good as 1, but I mean, she at least thought, okay, it'll be as good as Scream 2 probably. Right? She didn't know it was going to be this train wreck of a movie that Scream 3 was.
Mm-hmm.
Where they didn't have Neve Campbell, the star. They only had her for like 2 weeks of shooting, so you can sort of tell how they rewrote the plot to sort of fit around the fact that the main character's kind of missing for most of the movie. Anyway, so yes, Queen Latifah is also here in a very minor role.
Yeah, she's a red shirt.
Yeah, basically, yeah. So there you go. Is there anything else I want to say in spoiler-free territory? Nothing is bringing to mind. There's probably some stuff that I'll say in spoilers that could have been spoiler-free, but that always happens. Because we're going through the plot and spoiler territory, so things always pop up. But yeah, I think we'll break then for the spoiler section. So I'll take this time to thank our Patreon producers for the month. So thank you to Alison M. 4 Days, Tyler Hess, Cindy Palacios, David Short, Bornow, and Zammer Jammer. You can, of course, become a Patreon producer for $20 per month, but you don't have to be a $20 patron, do you, Tara?
I know. If you like what we do and you want to support what we do and get more of what we do, you can check out our Patreon page. It's patreon.com/MildfuzzTV, and donating as low as $1 per month will get you more of what we do. You get a library of back catalog of films that we've reviewed, some B movies, a lot of B movies, some movies that are even deserving to be on the main channel. So if you're wondering where Time Cop is, check out our Patreon page.
Yeah. One might say that Sphere should have been a Patreon episode, but I mean...
No, I don't think so. It's a Michael Crichton. Mainstream.
Is there anything else?
Samuel Jackson and Dustin Hoffman's Sharon Stone. That's not B movie.
Is there anything else you would... This is totally a B movie. Is there anything else you would like to add for the Patreon plug?
Yeah, if you want to donate $5, you will get even more benefits, including you get to vote on what we watch once a month, and you can get these episodes one day early.
Oh, it was going so well.
Thank you.
Good so well. You actually had some ad-libbing there at the start. You did a little bit different at the start of that whole thing.
Thank you.
I was impressed. Felt natural. Felt confident.
I felt like Dustin Hoffman in Sphere, just winging it.
All right then, full spoilers for Sphere from this point on. We can kind of work through the movie, which basically has a really over the top like title sequence at the start, where all the names are in like a circular like sphere kind of formation, where it's kind of revolving.
Get it? Because it's called Sphere.
I got it. Yeah, I got it.
Very clever.
And it opens with Huey Lewis flying Dustin Hoffman to the ships for some reason.
What?
Yeah, the pilot was Huey Lewis.
From the news?
Yes, who I only really know because of Back to the Future, but that was Huey Lewis.
Oh, cool. I didn't know that.
It's because he's got the shades on, he's got the helmet on, so it's not super obvious necessarily, but yeah, it's Huey Lewis. And Hoffman thinks he's there as a psychiatrist for a plane crash, and we learn that when he arrives, that not only does he happen to know the other people who have been brought in some capacity, that basically they're explained that this ship's down there because of the algae. It has to have been there for 300 years, which is ridiculous because
of the coral.
Because of the coral, yeah. Which is ridiculous because, well, nothing that's existed 300 years ago, so what's going on? It's like, well, it's some sort of alien thing, right? And it turns out that Dustin Hoffman, for the government, wrote a report of like kind of like a game plan, like what should happen in the event that we ever actually encounter an alien entity of some kind. And he wrote this report, which he admits like a couple of scenes later to Samuel L. Jackson's character, that this was this thing he wrote because he was asked to, they were paying him a lot of money, and it seemed like a harmless idea because it's never going to happen. but he basically kind of just made a lot of it up and just, you know, he did a little bit of research, but it's mostly just a lot of bullshit.
I like the idea that this government report was like, that's being taken very seriously, like, and has made the rounds to everybody, like, important, was just this made up thing. Like,
And that
totally BS.
And that's why he knows everyone else who's been taken, because the people he recommended in his report were all people he knew. It was like, specifically his students, because when he wrote this was when Sharon Stone was his student, for example, you know, because he's like he was working as a professor, presumably at
I think she was a patient.
or a patient, sorry, yes. Yeah, you're right, yeah, she is. Some unethical issues also arise from their history.
Yeah.
Where it sounds later on like he made up like a false suicide attempt to make her look a bit more crazy, to absolve him of like any repercussions of a sexual relationship. It was the gist I was getting from it.
Yeah, it sounds really bad, whatever it is. Like,
Yeah, and he basically sort of apologizes for it then, but just saying, I did something inappropriate to you, I'm sorry. And she's like, oh, thanks. And that's the end of it. That's that. We've moved on.
yeah, she's really holding a grudge. And okay, it's the last time, but like, I don't remember this at all from the book. I think this is like part of the Hollywood thing to make it like we need to have some kind of tension between these two. Like, I don't know. It's like the opposite of a love interest, but they have to have something thrown in there.
Well, just to be fair, it's not. From the sounds of it, because again, it didn't really go into it too much, annoyingly. Even though it comes up a lot, they somehow managed to never really clarify it that much. But it sounds like the relationship itself was consensual. I mean, obviously, there's some ethical issues about him being her doctor and like all the murky
She
doors.
brings up like she was married.
Yeah.
And like use that as a line, like, "Oh, I didn't know you were married," or something.
No,
like,
it's the opposite. He was married.
Yeah. No.
No, he was married.
I thought she said it to him as like she's making fun of something he said to her, like, "I didn't know you were married, Beth."
Yeah, like she was doing an impression of him, because she says this falls under. It's because when she finds out the report was fake, and this is when he admits that he stole half of it from Rod Serling and Isaac Asimov. Yeah, he's stealing some of this from science fiction writers. But she says this sounds a lot like, well, I thought you knew I was married. So she's referring to him being married, not her.
Oh, okay, yeah. You're
So,
right.
but yes, no, I did pop for the Rod Serling name drop. That was a nice touch.
And Isaac Asimov.
Yes. Well, I'm more familiar with Rod Serling, so I pop for that more.
Sure. Well, I mean, I guess we'll do iRobot. I've never seen that movie, actually, but I have read that book. So we get more in the book, Tara.
Yes. On her ivory tower, next to her private library. The Ivory Library. Oh, that even kind of rhymes. The Ivory
No,
Library.
I don't do ivory.
The arrogance. The arrogance of that.
I don't use animal products in my library. No leather-bound books. No.
Oh, it was a vegan
No
joke.
ivory tower.
Okay. It was a vegan joke. I do apologize. Sorry. Okay, what is a vegan-friendly way of saying you're being snooty?
I don't know. It sort of comes with the territory of being a vegan, doesn't it? So.
They're going down there. He's admitted to Samuel L. Jackson that he made up a lot of this report. He later kind of tells Sharon Stone as well, and she's kind of pissed at him for it. That all of this is basically just nonsense because, oh, well, I never thought it would happen, so whatever. I like that idea. There's a lot of ideas in here that I like. I thought a lot of the stuff of them like being explained, like how they're going to go down there and like and these because they mentioned they're going to have like diving training and stuff. I was expecting to see some of that,
like a montage.
Yeah, mainly just because I thought they were going to maybe explain some things that were going to be relevant later when they were in danger, like why they can't do this or why they should do that, or
there's bits of it that come up. Like they talk about how like the pressure you have to breathe in the helium, like you can't breathe concentrated oxygen at that pressure because it'll be toxic, and so it's mostly nitrogen. You can't just have an emergency, whatever it's called, ascent to the surface, or you have to depressurize. There's a lot of emphasis on pressure, and there's a lot of emphasis on the temperature of the water outside. Sharon Stone brings up, like, because she's a microbiologist or something, but she brings up like dangerous sea creatures that live under there. We get some backstory of them when they were young, what their fears were for water things, which shows up later. I mean, there's still quite a bit.
Yeah. I guess, you know, I felt kind of like it was rushing it to me. Like it was rushing it to
They
get us
do
down
go
there.
from like, oh, there's a possible alien spacecraft that we're going to make first contact with to we're there.
Yeah,
It does
feels
happen
like,
quickly.
but don't get me wrong, the movie's already 2 hours and like 15 minutes long, so it's not a short movie by any means anyway, but it does feel like it rushes through some stuff at the start. And again, this is the sort of thing where maybe another draft or two of the script might have, you know, been more economical with how it does these things in a way that feels more natural. But they get down, and they're very quickly going over to the ship, and, you know, some of the ideas in here that I really liked was this idea that they find some English text, and it's like, wait a minute, if this is an alien ship, why is there...
And Spanish.
Yeah, why is the word trash on on this thing? And then of course 2 minutes later they find some like a snack, like a snowball or something, like in this like skeleton's hand, and it's like, wait a minute, like this.
I think it's like some like almonds. Yeah.
And they're like, wait a minute, this is, and it's like, this is an American ship, and of course they point out that, but that's impossible. I mean, for a start, 300 years ago there was no Americans. Never mind the technology involved. And obviously, I think the audience right away goes, it's from the future. This is not an alien ship. This is a ship from the future, is what this is. And, you know, I didn't necessarily get any alien comparisons yet, even though technically the equivalent later on I realized was this is, you know, the crew and alien going to the derelict ship, right? But essentially, the reason why this made me think of aliens so much is that, you know, they find this sphere, right, which is the equivalent to the egg. And obviously there's some differences, but stay with me here, because basically, Samuel L. Jackson decides to kind of wander back into the ship on his own later on to go and touch the sphere, and he ends up, there's like a really bad effect of like him like mirrored in the sphere floating up it, because it points out the first time they see it that they don't get, like, it reflects things in the room but not them for some reason, so it's choosing what not to reflect, but then it reflects him and it's like he's inside the sphere, and he comes back and he just kind of like goes into like a coma for like a day, and some other stuff happens. And then he wakes up, and then immediately, as soon as he wakes up, because it comes in, it's like, hey, you know, I can't remember, like, what was it, Harry? His name is Harry in the movie. He's like, hey, guys, Harry's woken up, come and see this, right? And then it cuts to him eating. It cuts to him eating at like the diner, the round dining table, and I'm like, this is just beat for beat, like the sort of like 10% through 40% of Alien. Like there's like a section here that's just the plot of Alien, basically. This is Kane. But instead of having the chest burster, he went inside the sphere, but it's the same goddamn thing.
Yeah, I think it's also more that Samuel Jackson, like, once they get to the ship and they see that the report, like, or this mission is classified as unknown or something in the future, he basically says, well, we're all gonna die. And he is just checked out.
Just to explain that specifically, what it is that's unknown is that the log in the future says that they encountered an unknown event, which they then theorized, the characters have theorized they went through a black hole, and that's how they came back in time. Which is actually one of the biggest problems I have with the movie, is that it sets up this idea of a ship from the future, which is actually a genuinely interesting idea, and then it feels like it's almost irrelevant for the rest of the film. It doesn't matter. Outside of the one thing, which is Samuel L. Jackson has this theory.
Well, it becomes a survival movie after that.
Yeah. It's kind of a really intriguing part of the setup, which ultimately doesn't really matter that much. But yeah, so the unknown thing is that it's like the idea being that, wait, why is it unknown? If we go back to the surface and tell everyone what we've found, then it shouldn't be unknown. And
he's like totally checked out. And to be fair, it's pretty true to his character, because up until then, all of his theories have been correct. And so the fact that this is the most logical conclusion, he's definitely the smartest guy on board. And he just says, well, we're all going to die down here. And, you know, when people do start dying, it's like a non-event for him. Like, well, just waiting my turn, basically.
Yeah, I don't necessarily like that side of it. I feel like the performance and the character's written kind of a way where I don't necessarily even get checked out. At one point, I actually just thought he was outright possessed with an evil entity because he was acting so inhuman to like everything that was happening around him that it just didn't really feel like it was clicking. And obviously, there's a reveal later on exactly what's kind of happening, but there's a whole element to it that doesn't even like because at first when they first reveal something, it's like okay, so the rule is that it happens when someone's dreaming. But then that just goes out the window. Like 2 scenes later, it's like, oh, now sleeping's not a factor. Now it just happens all the time. Doesn't matter if you're awake or asleep. It just happens now. So it's inconsistent with its own rules.
Not really, because the first time that we get anything that's happening, we assume that it's happening because of Harry. But actually, it's happening because of Dustin Hoffman's character. And he's been awake the whole time. We just assume that because Harry is sleeping and this stuff is happening, that it's linked.
Okay. There's not a lot of flow in this movie, like, especially in the first half. It kind of just feels like a lot of random things keep happening.
It's probably because of the way it's edited, too.
Yeah, because this is the problem. It's not just that the events themselves feel really erratic, because that can be fine if the characters acknowledge that there's a lot of really weird random things happening and the atmosphere builds around that. I think my biggest problem is that the atmosphere around the film the entire time feels like it's just a survival movie. It never actually feels like it's ethereal and weird. It never like that should feel like what's a good comparison to make to another movie? It you know, I don't like to just say David Lynch.
I mean, we just watched Sunshine. And I kept thinking, like, the way that they worship, like, the actual sun when they got closer would be, and because that was very stylized and very, like, this is a central, like, character of the film, almost, is the sun, right?
I'd veer from that a little bit and say it should feel Lovecraftian, because essentially what this is a force that's beyond comprehension that causes all these weird things to start happening. It should be something where, it should feel surreal and... Like, I think ethereal is the best way I can describe it, which is something that's lacking in the movie. It never feels that way, despite the fact that all these weird things are happening. So they just kind of come across as like really random and like really, because essentially what the movie is, do you know that scene at the end of Ghostbusters where they're told not to think of anything because whatever they think of will become something, and then Ray thinks of the State Plus Marshmallow Man, so they get a giant.
I'm familiar.
Yeah. This movie's premise is basically that. It's a movie of all that. Where all of their fears and things that they're thinking about become real.
Yeah, but it's not just, well, what the sphere does is that it manifests something that you create in your mind. So because everyone's down there and they're so tense and afraid of their situation, they're abandoned because there's a storm coming. Another Crichton trope.
Yes.
They have to leave him behind in the shelter, and tensions are high. There's a alien thing on board, and they manifest fear, and they can't help it. So that's the point of the film, is that this thing isn't supposed to be malicious. It's that humans just aren't ready for this power.
Yeah, and if it actually told a nuanced story about that, I'd actually give it some credit. The idea is good, but it's garbage. I'm sorry. Like everything in the second half of this movie does not earn a single like point that it tries to make at the end. And the ending itself is just laughable. Like, what, you think this power lets you have the ability for you to wipe all your minds? That is nothing like the rest of the power you've had in this movie. Like, they all have this weird power where whatever they have in their mind is created. Nothing about that says to me they can just wipe their minds of what happened. And by the way, people died down there. If you all wipe your minds and you all have amnesia, then you're probably just all going to get, like, in trouble. You're all going to get, like...
Well, people did see a sphere rise out of the water, so they did see something fly out. So they saw this alien thing, like, fly from underneath the depths of the ocean into outer space and go away, presumably forever.
You keep talking about this as if it's actually making these points, and I feel like it isn't. I feel like.
Well, I mean, like, sure, people died down there, and they're going to have to answer some questions that they won't have answers to, but they won't be lying.
No, but like,
they actually don't know what happened.
I'm talking about before that, though. You're saying like this is the point of the movie, and I'm like, okay, I guess technically it's supposed to be the point of the movie, but I don't think the movie makes the point. I don't think the movie succeeds in making any of these points.
No, I mean, it's not the day the Earth stood still, but it's kind of the same premise, right? Like, we're not ready yet. We're not ready for first contact. We're not ready for too much power. We're probably not ready for the power that we have right now. Yes, nuclear power.
Yes, but here's the problem. I only got that from this movie because they fly out say it in the final scene. If the characters in this movie hadn't actually explained this to me at the end, I would never have got it. And not because the movie's super smart and I'm too dumb to get it, because the movie doesn't... Like, I should have been getting those themes long before the last 10 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, it does kind of turn into just a monster film where we don't really get to see the monster. And then, like, people, like, legit just start having these brutal deaths. And the
characters start acting super weird, but not in a way that... Like, it just feels like the characters start acting very erratically, but it never feels in a way where they make it like... The filmmaking never makes it completely clear to me that whether or not this is just a weird piece of writing where it's writing them inconsistently, or if there's a notable change in their actual character. Which is it was supposed to be. It's supposed to be that, no, they're affected because they're getting paranoid and all these things are happening. But the filmmaking doesn't actually get that across to me. The script doesn't get that across to me.
I would agree that that's the case for Sharon Stone's character and I think Sam Jackson's character. I don't agree with that for Dustin Hoffman. I think since he's our lead guy and we're with him almost the entirety of the film, there isn't really many scenes without him. That I don't get that from his character. But those two, there were a couple scenes I felt kind of frustrated because people just aren't talking to each other. Like, I want more dialogue between them, or like an interesting thing will pop up. Like there is a scene where they have made contact, presumably with the sphere. It turns out that might not be the case, but like at first they think that they're talking to the sphere and they keep calling him Jerry.
Well, we should explain this. We should explain the context of this because we ended up skipping ahead for some reason. But yeah, basically when Samuel Jackson's back on the main, hub, whatever it is, and he's asleep, weird stuff starts happening. Queen Latifah, for seemingly no reason, is attacked by jellyfish and killed. And that was the point in the movie. I was like, what is this movie? Like, what is this random ass jellyfish attack scene? This is stupid. What is this? I just thought the scene was dumb. And then
I thought it looked cool. Like the jellyfish were like real jellyfish. They looked, and at first they're like, whatever, they're just jellyfish. You're wearing a suit, just walk through them. But then they are obviously not jellyfish because they are sticking through the suit, and she just like drowns pretty horribly.
There's so many scenes where it just devolves into something. It's like, I feel like it wants to be a thinking person's science fiction film about the human condition, but it doesn't achieve any of it. It just devolves into B-monster movie nonsense randomly. And because the B-movie monster movie stuff is so random whenever they pop up, and sure, you have a bit more context by the end, but this was just one of these scenes where I was just like, what is this? What is this movie doing?
It's random, but like when she gets back on board the ship, it's, I can't remember the name of Dustin Hoffman's character.
Norman,
thank you. Norman, tells a story about how he jumped into an ocean over the boat when he was young and he landed in a school of jellyfish. So even though Harry is the one who's sleeping and he's got like his eyelids are moving and stuff, so we think that he's the one manifesting the jellyfish, it's Norman's story and he's manifesting it.
And the funny thing is that I also had a problem with like how everyone else kind of reacts to this. It felt like within a minute of like them doing this autopsy.
Well, she's gone.
Yeah, like no one acts like, because there's a moment, because when Samuel Jackson wakes up and he's having food, like that scene I mentioned earlier, there's a point where he starts talking about other characters who aren't in the scene, and he mentions Queen Latifah's character, and like the captain or the guy in charge goes, oh yeah, she's not gone. So what do you mean gone? It's like, oh, she's dead. And he just delivers it in such a, it's like, that should feel like, oh shit, like he doesn't know. It should feel like his heart sinks because he has to tell him that someone on the cruise just died.
He's also expecting it, right?
But it should be devastating.
Well, I mean, Samuel Jackson is.
Yeah, but it's not just him. It's the way the guy delivering the news also feels like it feels off. It feels like the delivery is wrong. It feels like no one feels the fact that this was not supposed to be a mission where people were in danger of dying, and someone just died in the most weird, surreal way. And it's just kind of this thing. And to be honest,
military guy.
And to be honest, but not just him though. I'm talking about Dustin Hoffman. I'm talking about Liev Schreiber. I'm talking about all the civilians. All of them don't react appropriately. And Samuel Jackson, despite the fact you're telling me, he's expecting people to die because he kind of predicts that, I don't know if he really believes it. Like, if anything, his reaction to this should have been played a bit more like, I actually might be right. Shit. Like, you know, like I don't know how actually committed he is to the idea when he theorized it, because this is the logical conclusion, but it's just theory. It's just this thing. Like, that should have been the moment where it kind of hits him, like, wait, I actually may be right. We may all be dying down here, or something. You know, I don't know. It played so falsely, which it just sums up like 90% of this movie. Like, everything it kept trying to do, I kept feeling like this just feels off. It feels like something's not quite clicking here in the ideas. So even though I can see what it's trying to do, I can see the points that it's trying to make about humanity. None of it really comes across in the film at all. It's when they explain it at the end. It reminds me, there was an episode of Star Trek that me and Connor did recently. Was that Star Trek? I think it was a Star Trek. No, it was a Twilight Zone. It was me and you that did this. It was the episode with the actor going back in time, and if they hadn't actually spelled out what the message of the episode was at the end, I would never have gotten it. And we both said that.
Right.
Because
yeah.
it just didn't do it. It just didn't, you know, show the idea and, you know, play with it enough. And I think I feel the same here, where it just doesn't actually do any of the message that it's supposed to have, and then just tells us it at the end. It's like, okay, sure, that was there the whole time. Yeah.
All right. Yeah. I mean, it's not perfect. It's definitely got its.
Sorry, continue. Sorry.
It's not a perfect adaptation. But I think it's there. You know, I think the points are there. I think the characters are mostly true to who they are. Like, I understand his character, Samuel Jackson's character. Like, he's the guy who's just been right. Like, whenever Liev Schreiber, the other scientist with the theories, like, he's still the wonderkin who's holding on to the idea of this is going to be first contact and I'm going to be Neil Armstrong. And Sam Jackson is just, no, he's the Spock. He's like, whatever is the most logical is the correct answer. And his theories end up being right all the time. Like, he was right about the ship not being an alien ship. He was right about the sphere being alive. And he just assumed he's right about death, about everybody dying, because of, you know, otherwise it contradicts time, what happens in the future. So I think that it's true enough to his character, and he has like an arrogance about him that I buy because of it. But there are some scenes that, like, yeah, I sort of wish that when Queen Latifah died, that there was more emotion behind it, especially since,
because he's not supposed to be a robot. Yeah, he does actually. I mean, you compare him to Spock, but
I don't know if it needs to be from Samuel Jackson, but from everyone else, I sort of wish that there was more. Yeah,
they feel so like tone deaf given the moment that's just happened. It's really weird, I think. And then especially when another character dies, it's like, you know, this other red shirt who's also doing tech stuff. It's like, okay, well.
Yeah, I am disappointed in this scene simply because, like, we're promised a giant squid and all we get is a radar image of one, and the results of, and like a lot of eggs falling with tiny squid in it, which is not like the worst thing. Like, that's kind of, that scene was still intense, like when they're in a race against time to get back to the hatch. But
yeah, because they're out doing stuff.
I am disappointed that we don't see any squid.
Because they're out doing stuff and all these eggs start falling. You know, there's a lot of racing to get back to places when they're in diving suits. That happens a few times. Dustin Hoffman has a scene as well where a snake thing attacks him.
And his suit's been compromised.
Yeah, and it happens again later on as well. And it's him being scared of these snakes. Because there's a moment where he's talking to Samuel Jackson and he's reading, you know, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, and then this weird thing happens where all the food disappears and changes into, I mean, because even before this, there's a weird thing where Sharon Stone leaves to go back to the spaceship and comes back, and he questions why she did this, and she's like, oh, because there was no food, so I went to go see if there was food. Which, to be honest, even in the context of what she thought she saw, it's still weird to go over to that ship without even talking to everyone else first, that, oh, by the way, there's no food.
Plus the food there would be 300 years old.
Yeah, as you know, she was home for...
You can't wait like 3 days to go back to the surface.
Yeah, weird. But there's this moment where all the food turns into the book, right? And all the cupboard just has all these copies of the book in there. But all the copies end at page, like, was it 87, whatever the page was. It was the page with the description of the squid. And there's a moment there where I was like, what is this movie? What is it doing? Like, I almost kind of felt like, again, the tone and the atmosphere just didn't feel like it lent itself to all this surreal stuff that it just kind of randomly started doing. It feels like a real mishmash of like what it wants to be, what it's supposed to be, and just like a generic 90s sci-fi horror movie that it actually kind of is. And you know, and after the giant, because we have this big thing during all this where Liev Schreiber dies because he's like sort of like pinned down to the grate, and this like fire comes up and like basically melts his face. It's a pretty gruesome death. It's probably the most gruesome death in the movie, I thought.
That and the captain, like he gets cut in half by a door.
Yeah, inherently I think being melted is harsher than being cut in half, but I suppose it's just down to personal preference. Preference is a weird word, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, I mean, you don't want to inhale fire, but also you don't want to be crushed and cut in half.
Yeah. I mean, it's, you know, it is what it is. So I feel like at this point in the movie, like, they all start doing really weird things, and they all start turning on each other. And I feel like part of the problem with this is that I almost think you should take away some of the more fantastical elements. Like, let's say... Or maybe not, I don't know. Like, I feel like once they all start turning on each other and they're all doing these things where, Sharon Stone becomes convinced that Dustin Hoffman also went into the sphere and he's got this power too because he was the one who thought of the jellyfish, and she traps him in a room and essentially tries to kill him, which I thought was weird actually, because she's drowning him in the room to convince him to take the
serum that'll put him to sleep.
Yeah, the serum that'll put him to sleep, and he opens the hatch at the top and she's like, no, don't do that, it'll kill you if you go out there. I'm like, by the time she said that, the room was like up, like there was like 2 millimeters at the top of the room that still had like no water in it. I'm like, you're going to kill him anyway. Like, yeah. What do you think is going to happen?
Yeah, I think she was talking about the cold.
Yeah.
But you're right. I think, I don't know, maybe she was hoping he would at the last second take the serum.
It's going to drown anyway. And they have this realization where, Hoffman's like, look, it's us that are doing this and we keep turning each other. That's what happened to the people on this other ship. They basically turned on each other because they all started manifesting things and it made them really paranoid, and they turned on each other. And it's happening to us now too. So we have to get out of here. We have to just go. And I thought it was weird how like intense this gets in terms of what the powers actually does, because, at first it starts manifesting creatures, or it manifests like items to change, right? But by the time we get towards the end, it starts like teleporting all three of them, where they'll actually be in like the little sub, the little safety sub that's going to send them back up to the top, and it'll teleport them to like a long corridor in the spaceship because Samuel L. Jackson's like thinking about it, and I'm like, man, it's getting really like bizarrely kind of trippy in a way that again just feels out of place in the movie.
I mean, that's how we assume the ship got there in the first place, though, was because teleportation. One of the things that's noted is that the ship has no hulls, like structural damage. It's fully intact. And, at first they're saying it's because there's some kind of a new type of metal that we don't know about that's super strong. But then when they try to open the door, they have to use a hammer and chisel, and it chips. So clearly it's not that structurally sound. So, I mean, the only explanation then is that it teleported there.
Which, no, it does explain that mystery set up early on in the film. It does. The point I'm trying to make, though, is that, again, this felt just... It's so weird to say that a movie's
it's
like...
It's a nightmare, what? It's like you're late for work or you're late for school, and in your nightmare, something just keeps keeping you from getting there.
I understand it, but what I'm trying to say is that, again, this is a weird complaint to make, and I know it sounds really surreal to say that a core idea in a movie feels completely out of place every time it comes up in the movie, but it does, because the movie doesn't feel like it is supposed to be this trippy nightmare film or this trippy thing where all these random things keep happening. It feels so out of tone with the generic late 90s film that it is. But it is happening, it's there, and it keeps doing things. And I don't know, like, everything about it just felt like scenes didn't flow from one scene to the next. I felt lots of awkward editing, not just in the chapter transitions, although those were obviously one of the bigger signifiers of it.
Yeah, I agree with that.
But there was other little weird edits. There was moments where it felt like anytime they were dealing with the sphere, like it felt really weird how like two of them didn't even remember going to the sphere, but apparently it happened. It just kind of like they've forgotten about it somehow. It kind of does this. It feels like it wants to be the thing, you know. If anything, the thing's probably the best thing to compare it to. It wants to be the paranoid like version, you know. It wants to be the thing, but instead of creepy, one of us is a monster. It's their imaginations are doing these things.
Yeah, it's all of them.
You know, I think that's again the ideas there, and maybe the book is much better. It wouldn't surprise me because some of the core concepts here are pretty cool. If anything, though, if anything, I would just say that the tease of this ship being from the future is never really. It's never really like I wish it was explored more because it's such a cool idea. Because as much as it explains the teleportation with the whole power thing, I don't know if it explains why they came back so far in time. Like, why would the...
Yeah, well, I think they chalk that up to the black hole.
Okay.
But traveling through a black hole, because space and time I'll get all jumbly.
I guess. But did they even go through a black hole, though? I mean, if it was teleportation... I mean...
Well, I don't know. I mean, maybe they were and then teleported out, or maybe they went through and then teleported.
Yeah, maybe they went through first and then teleported. That's possible.
I'm not sure, like, but I think they chalk that up to the black hole in the film. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe it could have been explained a bit more clear if we needed it.
Yeah, I think my biggest problem is just the weird identity issues that it has, and none of the interesting ideas that it has actually sort of come across. And I like the idea of the message that it's trying to give out, but you know, it all comes down to this scene at the end where they're back up in the ship and they're discussing what they tell people, because like, can we tell them what happened down there? Can we tell them what's going on? And they're like, no, like, and so Samuel L. Jackson thinks of the loophole. He's like, well, you know, we're still alive, but in the future it's an unknown event, so I guess that means that we just don't tell them. So we have the power to forget, and that was the part that surprised me. I was like, well, why do you have to forget it? Why can't you just not tell them? Like, but I was like, no, we have the power to forget. So they hold hands, and apparently this power can do that. It can alter their memories. So, and for some reason when they do this, the sphere flies up out the water and goes to space. In fact, one of the weirdest bits of editing in this whole movie is right at the end. We see the sphere go up into space and it's flying through space, and for some reason it fades back to the three characters for like 2 seconds and then immediately fades back to space, and it's like this awkward little transition to them for no reason. It doesn't, because if it sat on them for long enough, I'd be like, okay, you want us to see them one last time before it goes to the final shot, but it's like you barely notice that you've cut to the shot before it starts fading back out again. It's so weird. I don't know. Sloppy.
I guess they wanted to just let you know, the director wanted to let you know that they're the ones who are doing this. Still, but all right.
Yes. I feel like a dick. I feel like you keep trying to like say why you like this, but the problem is that I just fundamentally disagree that it's achieving any of this stuff. It's like you saw a movie. It's like you saw, I can imagine a version. You saw the version where it succeeded in doing all the things that it was trying to do, and therefore you really like it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you're also coming at this from a first-time viewer, and I'm very familiar with the story, so it's hard. Maybe it's hard for me to separate. You know, what I know from previous watches or from reading, but maybe. Yeah, maybe it's not great, but I still find it like fun to watch, and it's almost like, I don't know, like little comfort food of film. Like it's not good, but like it's still cool. Like I like the world, or I like the design of the ship. I like the characters, even if they're not consistent. I like the story. I like the ideas. I like the mystery. Yeah, I don't think it deserves a low rating, and which maybe is why I'm a bit defensive, because
you're definitely
it is
defensive,
very
yeah.
like it is very critically banned, or like panned, excuse me, but like I don't
critically banned. Critics aren't allowed to talk about this movie.
Yeah, you know what I mean. So it's like, yeah, I feel like I'm off to like I have to defend it because I do like it, and so I don't think it's as bad as people say it is. Like, maybe it's not a great film, sure, but I don't think it deserves 12% on Rotten Tomatoes, or I don't think it's a it's like a 2-star film.
The problem with Rotten Tomatoes though is that if I think it's a bad movie, then I think every review should be bad, which technically means it should be a 0%. Like, you know, if you agree with the reviews, then either it should be a 0% or 100%.
Okay, well, that's stupid because I'm not going to give everything 100%.
Well,
this isn't thumbs down, thumbs up, or thumbs down.
Well, no, but that's the point I'm making, is that Rotten Tomatoes, like 65% say, isn't like saying that it's 65 out of 100. It's not a rating in the same way that like an actual rating is from someone, or an average score. It's not an average score. I mean, the average score is also on Rotten Tomatoes. You can see that if you look at the other bit. But you know, is the point I'm trying to make here. And so, I don't know, it's a good indication, because you can sort of say if enough people are saying it's good, then there's a good chance that it is good. If enough people say it's bad, it's a good chance it's bad. And you know what? I mean, you could talk about if it deserves 12%, but that told me it's probably a bad movie. And would you believe it? Would you believe it? It is a bad movie.
No, it's not. It's not that bad.
Do you know what I hate about this so much is that when Tim is like delirious and tries to convince me that the boy is good, he'll sit there and he'll be this crazy man who is obviously completely nuts. You make me feel bad for, like, when I'm yelling at Tim and telling him why he's a lunatic, it feels justified. With you, I feel guilty. I feel bad that I'm ruining something that you like.
It doesn't deserve to be like in the same category as like legit bad movies. I don't think. Like, it's perfectly fine. Like, sure, it's a little underdone, but and maybe a remake could be great. In fact, I can guarantee it.
I guarantee it.
Thank you, John Hammond. But I don't know. Like, I do feel like I have to, I have to bat for the film a little bit, because I don't know who else will.
If I'm comparing this to other B-movie sci-fi movies, like, I would much rather watch Leviathan again than watch Sphere again.
But Leviathan is not good. Like, that's a legit bad movie that's sort of fun to watch. Like, this movie is not a bad movie, and it's, like, pretty good. Like, it's pretty fun to watch, I think.
No. It's a bad movie that you like to watch.
I don't think so.
It is. It's bad. It's got lofty aspirations.
This is more Terminal Man than it is Jurassic Park, for sure. But it's not bad. It's not boring. The characters are interesting. The ideas are cool. The setting is fun. It's just, it suffers from being a little underdone.
It's got lofty aspirations, which almost entirely, I assume, come from the book. But the filmmaking here is bad. The way it's edited is bad. The choice in how it displays its information is bad. The way the characters like feel like it doesn't feel like it actually sets you up for what it's actually doing. It always feels disjointed, like there's something off, and not in the way that the movie wants you to feel. It feels off in a way that I feel like, what are they doing with the script? Like, what are they doing here? Like, because usually when a movie's intentionally want me to feel like something's weird or something, I'm intrigued because it's trying to draw me into the mystery of it. I didn't feel mystery in this. I just kind of feel like, what the hell is this movie doing? Like, it's just, it's a fine line to walk, and it's just something where, obviously some people may disagree on what a good example of that is. One that I say does it well, someone else will be snooty and go, no, actually, I think this is a mess too.
Yeah, I think a lot of people feel that way about, Prometheus. I feel like everything in there should be a great film, but it's just not, and people tell me it is, and I don't.
Who are these people?
Lots of people love Prometheus.
No, they don't. This is you've imagined this.
I know people. I've had, discussions with my sister about it, and she doesn't understand how I don't see a great movie when I watch it, and I don't understand what she sees.
Well, I can tell you this: the review of Prometheus when it comes on this show will not be kind.
No.
And I'm someone who talked myself into kind of liking it when it first came out. When I watched that for the second time, before.
Well, I never liked it, but I kept watching it, assuming that it would be better the next time I watched it.
Yeah. No, I got much worse the second time I saw it. Much worse.
Still bored. Yeah.
No, I do genuinely think this movie's a mess. It's a mess, and its execution, for everything fundamentally about the direction feels lacking. I feel like the actors aren't that great in the movie, not because these people aren't good actors, to varying degrees. I think I think Hoffman and Jackson are both great. I love both those guys.
Oh, I think Sharon Stone is like a marvelous actress, and like, she was great in Total Recall that we did. She was great in
she's fun.
Movie?
She's fun in Total Recall. It's been too long since I've seen Basic Instinct to really remember.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to think of.
How good she was.
She's great in Basic Instinct, but and she's like super powerful in that film. And in this movie, she's the right. She seems like the right casting, but some of her line deliveries are really flat.
No, I think all the actors suffer in this movie because I think their dialogue isn't that great in a lot of places. And I think the direction is just really poor. I feel like, do you know what it feels like? It feels like one of those movies where there was 3 different directors who each did like a third of the movie, but not in order. It feels like, one director had 5 scenes in the opening, a couple of scenes in the middle, and then did most of the ending. And then another director did all this section and maybe a couple of random scenes over there. I am willing to bet you. I mean, you said that it was rushed because they were tight on time. I'm willing to bet you a large part of that was because of a troubled production. I'm willing to.
Underwater.
Even beyond that, it feels like creatively there was a troubled production to this. Maybe a lot of it stemmed from we have to keep cutting things because the underwater stuff has to be cut down, but it has development hell written all over it. And maybe it wasn't. Maybe that's the charm of the movie, is that this director and writer combo just gave me a movie that feels that way. But that's how it feels. It feels like
right.
It feels like a. I mean, disaster's probably a bit harsh, but
yeah.
But it's not good. I mean, do you know what? I'm happy that you have the boy.
Oh, thanks.
You have your
Don't patronize me.
weirdo movie that. Hey, I've got mine. I have examples where I really like a movie that no one else does. And one day we will review Chappie and we'll have that conversation.
Oh my god, that's gonna be so painful. I can't believe you like that horrible film.
Well, I've listened. To be fair, I've only seen it the once. I might hate it the second time. This could be a situation.
Oh my god, it's so bad.
Chappie. Oh,
and I like Dee Antwoord. They were rough in the movie.
I don't know who they are outside of that movie, but it's fine. That's a conversation for a day someday. Hey, look, we're all allowed to have some of our guilty pleasures, all right? And you even admitted that it was a guilty pleasure.
Yeah, it is. This is my Lego game of films. I like the story. I like seeing it on film.
Well, so, I guess what I'll say is, though, for a movie that you admit is a guilty pleasure, you're very defensive of. That's all I'm going to point out.
I don't think it fails in all the reasons that you say it does. Like, I think the story is there and the plot details are there. You might have just been distracted by your phone or something. I don't know.
How dare you? How dare you? I was paying attention. Thank you very much.
Well, then why did I give you so many reasons?
I disagree with those reasons were valid, though.
But they were just details in the film.
Just because the details aren't everything. The details alone aren't enough.
Okay, well, I think there's enough there to make it a fun movie to watch.
If it was just details, if a movie would just be like a textbook, you just have to make sure it's all there. The finesse and how you put them there, the finesse and how you bring them across, how they tie together, all those things matter. Don't shake your head.
I think we should rate this movie.
Don't look at me like I'm being a pretentious douchebag here, because we're on a goddamn movie podcast to review and discuss our feelings on movies. You can't just get mad at me because I'm using.
I'm not mad at you. I'm mad at the world. Because most people are on your side about this film, and I think that I'm tired of Spear being a punching bag. All right. I'm here to stop the bullying and say, you know what, it's a decent science fiction film, and you guys need to cool it.
I remember seeing the cover, like in the video store, right? Because this was back in those times, right? You know, when I
Very
was
blue cover with the faces.
yeah, and I remember seeing the cover, and I never got it. It always looked like just one of those movies, you know, like it had that aura around it, and
Oh
yeah,
yeah,
you know, I
that blue aura.
not the blue aura. That's not what I'm trying to say. It looked like one of those movies that just, you know, that does play at 2 a.m. on cable, and they do it because it's cheap, because the studio know that it's not worth anything, so they license it out for next to nothing.
Okay.
It's borderline garbage. Okay, I'm sorry.
Okay.
See that now you're just going okay because
I'm ready to rate the movie.
I know you are. I know you are, but damn it, I'm making my point. Even Huey
I
Lewis
think you've made
could
it.
save this. See, this is the thing. Tim, when I'm making fun of the boy or leprechaun, gets all wacky and ridiculous. You're making me feel bad. I feel
Those
like
are ridiculous, wacky films. Although I can't say I've never seen The Boy. I, for some reason, have no desire to.
Good, because you're at least somewhat sensible. I mean, I'll question it a little bit after this review, but for the most part, you're a sensible human being whose taste I can respect.
Come on, people. There's got to be someone on my side about Sphere. Please tell me. Please tell me I'm not alone in the universe.
Oh dear, I'm definitely going to reconsider every time you say we should do this movie going forward.
Oh, don't reconsider. Cocoon is fun. I think it's been many years since I've seen
Yeah,
it.
we'll see. Is the plan to do that next week? I know we're not quite telling them what's happening next week yet, but we haven't really decided yet.
I don't. We'll probably just stick to the schedule for right now.
Okay, we'll sort it back in at a later date.
Yeah.
All right, so I'll look at what's next time. Actually, I thought I knew what it was. Oh, I do know what it is. All right, anyway. So ratings. We're doing ratings. So what are you giving Sphere?
I think that I have said all I need to say about the film. You know where I stand. I think it's a pretty good science fiction film, and I recommend that people watch it. It's a unique little 90s sci-fi film that's kind of been lost. So it's not, you know, the best version of this film that could have existed, but this is what we got, you know. Can't be with the one you love the one you're with. So I don't love the film, but I do enjoy watching it, and I enjoy the sci-fi. I am going to give it a 7. I know it's generous. I'm sticking with my rating.
That is so generous. That is. If Bezos was that generous, we would not have world hunger anymore.
I was going in around like a 6.5, but you know my constant defense of the film has gone up a half a point. Come on, people! I know you're out there. Please comment. Let me know I'm not alone.
There's a point in the movie where like Dustin Hoffman's in a bathroom and like one of the snake things starts attacking him and swimming towards him and it's like biting at his face, and I'm like, this is just so goofy, and like you can either be like the smart, intelligent film about the human condition and about how awful we are and that we're not ready for this wonderful technology of like just making things happen, or you can be a movie about a stupid water snake they're chomping at your face. Like, pick one. Pick one. And
Is that your review?
I'm being a bit reductive, to be honest, because you can do it, but you have to do it with a bit more class than this. They felt so goofy. Anyway, yeah, my rating of Sphere. What's funny because my number is going to look a lot like a sphere as well. I'm kidding. I'm not giving it a 0. I'm not that hyperbolic on this issue, okay? But I will give it. This is a solid 3.5.
Oh. This channel is over.
Hey, I'm a little concerned that the audience may think your credibility is just been shot out of a cannon.
I can't wait for Sphere 2 to come out.
No, we'll call it Sphere 2, it'll be called Spheres.
Spheres. It's too much like balls.
Alright, that has been Sphere. If you got to this part in the review, type the word. I don't know. You give them something. You're good at this.
Squid egg.
Squid egg. All right. Type the word squid egg in the comments if you got to this part of the review. You can, of course, liking is very important. On YouTube, lets the algorithm know that you recommend us out, so please do that. Get us on Twitter at the Ace Podcast, and we also mentioned, of course, Patreon earlier. Patreon.com/MailFuzzTV for your financial support from as little as $1. Please go and do that too if you like us and you love us and you want to see more content coming, more of these wonderful debates, and other wacky reviews. So what's coming next time? We're actually doing something we promised we would a while ago. We're going to be looking at the 80s version of the Blob, because we did the 50s
fun.
version. Well, that's probably about 6 months ago now at this point, but we said we'd come back in the nearish future and do the 80s one to sort of go full circle on it.
I think I've seen it. I think I saw it, like, not in the 80s, but like early 90s.
Yeah, I've not seen I'd seen the 50s one before we'd done it, but I've not seen the 80s one, so this will be a first time for me, which is cool. So, although
Hopefully
one last
we can find it.
Yes, one last. Well, I'll actually we'll make a point of looking earlier on this time.
Yeah.
But one last bit of business though is that Tara needs to do her pose for the thumbnail, so I'm going to count down 3, 2, 1 and say pose, and Tara's just going to spring into a pose.
Okay.
So this is kind of a bonus treat for the video people, because the audio people don't get to see this obviously. But 3, 2, 1, pose. Okay, I'm going to have to actually do it again because the tip of your head was cut off at the top.
Oh.
That's the only rule for
But
these.
now it's not genuine.
That's not potato. We'll do a different one then. Even though I like that one. All right. 3, 2, 1, pose. Okay, I'm gonna have to make sure I do a suitably grumpy.
Yeah, we're good cop, bad cop in this one.
Counter pose. More like sensible cop, crazy cop, but yes.
I am a sensible cop.
Yes. Oh, did we ever even talked about the whole computer thing with the Jerry name? We started talking about it and then we sort of went down a path.
Yeah, that was a frustrating part for me, was that I was frustrated that he said stop calling me Jerry, and then nobody asked why. Nobody asked any questions from there.
Yes.
What would you like me to call you?
The whole thing was kind of weird to me. I guess the assumption was that either Liev or Samuel L. Jackson, that they imagined, or this was their doing, thinking of this, and it wasn't actually the sphere itself. But it never really went into it, or really, like that was one of those times where it felt like the movie was down a path. You know how like we always said about God Told Me To, how we loved how every time it took a left turn it committed to it. This film doesn't quite do that. It kind of takes a left turn and then sort of like just reverses after 10 minutes.
We're done with the review section.
I know, but I'm making this final point because I think it's valid. I might even like clip this out and put it earlier on. I probably won't, but but I might. It's possible. Okay, that is us. That has been the Atomic Cinema Experiment, and Tara's giving me that look, which is stop this review now, or I'm going to get very mad. So, thank you very much for watching or listening. We always appreciate it. Keep watching science fiction. I'm still getting that look. For the audio listeners, I'm still getting it. So thank you once again. We'll see you next time. And computer, add salsa.
Follow the yellow brick road.